For months, churches in El Paso have received hundreds of immigrants daily. But now all that is changing and their numbers have dropped drastically. Since October, Border Patrol officers here have apprehended more than 120,000 adults and children, a more than 1,000% increase over the past year. Upon their release, churches here have tried to fill the gap. Tiny El Elyon, a neighborhood congregation, has cared for 70 people a night.
We used to do this every single day, 7 days a week.
Pastor Maribel showed us pictures of families as they arrived, received food, clothing, shelter, and prayer. Most usually stayed just one night, then caught a bus or flew out of the city to connect with family elsewhere.
I never realized how far this would go, but I was always depending on the Lord and saying, Lord, what do you want me to do? It's a multitude of people that need us.
Church leaders in El Paso believe President Trump's new Remain in Mexico policy is behind the drop in numbers. Not only do asylum seekers go back to wait on court dates, Mexican police also deter immigrants from crossing into Mexico or seeking to enter the U.S.
It's uncertain yet exactly why that is. Maybe they're being released somewhere else. Certainly more are being released back into Mexico, which is really going to be probably a lot more of a challenge.
This past week, leaders from the Evangelical Immigration Table came to hear from Border Patrol officers and tour one of the last church shelters still open in El Paso.
What we know about this situation is that it's fluid. It is changing all the time. Could shift back. We'll see what happens.
Sami DiPasquale, who leads a Christian community center here, says churches are pivoting to support their counterparts in the city of Juarez, Mexico. Evangelical leaders also visited a Methodist shelter in Juarez. While there's a growing coalition of evangelical churches here, it's not enough to care for the thousands of asylum seekers waiting on a U.S. hearing.
So they're waiting in Mexico, the shelters are full, they don't have authorization to work while they're in Mexico.
World Relief's Matt Soren says legal help, like his organization provides, is also difficult to find in Mexico. That could mean greater numbers will face deportation.
If they have a well-founded fear of persecution under the Refugee Act of 1980, they should be allowed to stay. But the burden is on them to prove that, and that can be a difficult thing to prove.
Pastor Maribel says El Elyon is ready to receive migrants again, should it be needed. And she won't forget the stories, courage, and faith of those she helped.
They're very humble people, hardworking people. They're people very loyal. Once you have the chance to sit down with one of them and listen, it will break your heart. It will break your heart. It will change your mind, the way that we think of them.
Experts say asylum courts in El Paso reject most cases, but for these desperate people, living in the U.S. remains a dream worth fighting for. Reporting in El Paso, Heather Sells, CBN News.